The engine coughed once, then turned over with a low, wet growl. That sound used to bother me when I first started. Now it was just background noise, something familiar to keep me grounded while the rest of the world slept. Midnight shifts weren't for everyone, but they worked for me. No small talk, no distractions, just snow, silence, and the long stretches of empty road that didn't ask for anything except to be cleared. I parked at the depot on the outskirts of town. The lot was quiet. A couple other plow trucks sat under the tall halogen floodlights, engines still warm, steam drifting from their exhaust pipes like breath from tired lungs. I stepped out of my pickup, boots crunching into the packed snow. My breath came out in heavy bursts, immediately swallowed by the cold. It was one of those nights that felt colder than it should, the kind that settled into your joints like the air itself was pushing into you. Inside the dispatch building, the fluorescent lights flickered, casting a sickly glow over the chipped linoleum. I rubbed my hands together and grabbed my thermos from my coat pocket. The coffee was already lukewarm. Janine, the overnight dispatcher, looked up from her desk. She didn't smile. "Truck 6, Route 3 tonight," she said, sliding the clipboard across the counter. "Bit more coverage than usual." I nodded, not thinking much of it. Forecast worse than expected. She shrugged. That or someone screwing with the route software again. Either way, they want every named road touched by sunrise. I looked down at the route sheet. Most of the names were familiar: rural stretches, back roads, a couple steep grades near the river bluffs. But one stood out, written in red ink at the very bottom. Crimson Way. I frowned. I'd never heard of it. I'd been working this district for 5 years. I knew every road like the lines on my palm. I'd driven in blizzards so thick I couldn't see more than 6 feet and still knew where every bend and intersection was supposed to be. But Crimson Way, that wasn't one of ours. "You sure this is right?" I asked. Janine didn't even look at it. "That's what dispatch sent. You want to call and argue, be my guest." I didn't. I'd learned to stop asking questions about things that were outside my pay grade. You show up, you clear what they tell you to clear, you go home. That was the deal. Still, something about the name made me uneasy. I signed out, walked across the lot, and climbed into Truck 6. The cab smelled like diesel, dust, and a hint of whatever cologne the last guy used. I wiped condensation off the windshield and keyed the ignition. The radio crackled to life with the usual static before settling into a low hum. Outside, snow fell like sifted ash, light but constant. It had been coming down for hours and showed no sign of stopping. I clicked on the overhead lights, checked the salt spreader, and flipped on the plow controls. Everything was in order. I tapped the route into the GPS panel. Each road lit up one by one on the screen. Blue lines turned green as I confirmed them. When I reached the bottom, Crimson Way appeared with a short flashing prompt. "Unverified location. Proceed with caution." The words blinked twice, then disappeared. I stared at the screen for a moment, then tapped accept. I should have said something. I should have gone back inside and asked again. But I didn't. Maybe I was tired. Maybe I didn't want to seem paranoid. Or maybe deep down I already knew the answer and I wasn't ready to hear it. The blade dropped with a solid clang. I pushed the throttle forward and pulled out of the lot. The town fell behind quickly. Streetlights flickered past in regular intervals, casting long shadows over the fresh powder. The plow chewed through the snow in wide, grinding sweeps. It was hypnotic, the way it curled to either side in smooth waves. I cleared the southern residential blocks first. Empty driveways, silent houses. Only the occasional glow from a porch light or a second-story window reminded me anyone still lived here. By 1:30, I was halfway through Route 3. That's when I noticed it again. The wind. It had died down an hour ago, but now it picked up in strange bursts. Not the long howls I was used to, but short, jerking gusts. like something was exhaling right against the windows. I tightened my grip on the wheel. The snow began falling in thicker flakes, heavy and wet. Visibility dropped to less than 20 feet. I leaned closer to the windshield, scanning for the next turnoff. The GPS said I was nearing Crimson Way. I slowed down. There was no sign, no intersection marker, no mailbox or fence, just a narrow slit in the trees on the right side of the road, partially buried in drifts. The GPS pinged. Now entering Crimson Way. But there was no road. Not a paved one anyway. Just a path. Tire width, dug into the snow like it had been freshly carved. It stretched forward between the trees, too narrow for anything but my truck. The plow would barely fit. I sat there for a long moment, engine rumbling beneath me. Something in my chest told me to turn around. But my fingers moved on their own. I eased the truck into the path. The snow on this stretch was different. Not just thicker. It didn't move the way it should. The plow blade scraped at it, but instead of curling off to the sides, it clung to the front, sticky and dense. Like slush, but colder, crystalline. The trees pressed in on either side. Pines and bare oaks bent slightly toward the path, weighed down by snow. I felt like I was being swallowed. After about 50 yards, the GPS cut out. No signal. No road map. Just a blinking red dot floating in blank space. I should have stopped then. I should have reversed and backed out, scraped what I could and called it in. But something was already wrong. Something subtle. Something that made the air inside the cab feel thinner than it had a few minutes ago. My fingers were numb. My tongue felt heavy in my mouth. And outside the windshield, the world had gone completely silent. No wind. No engine noise. No metal grinding on snow. Only the faint sound of my own heartbeat. I looked down at the route sheet on the passenger seat. Crimson Way was still there, circled in red. But beneath it, scribbled in handwriting I didn't recognize, were 4 words I swear hadn't been there before. You've already begun. I stared at the words until they blurred. Then I put the truck back into drive. And I kept going. The road ahead twisted through thick forest, trees closing in like ribs around a lung. I drove slower than usual, headlights struggling against the fog that had started to gather. It wasn't the natural kind of fog either. It came in low, crawling over the snow like it had weight, like it was looking for something. Visibility dropped to almost nothing. I eased off the throttle, letting the plow idle forward. It was then that the cold inside the cab started to bother me. The heat was on, vents humming, but my fingers still ached and my jaw had started to tighten. My breath fogged the inside of the windshield even though the defroster was running. I pulled off my glove and rubbed at the glass, squinting into the white. That's when I noticed the glove box. It was open just slightly. I hadn't opened it. I was sure of that. My eyes stayed on it for a moment. The cab was sealed. The doors were locked. The road had been empty for miles, but still, something about that tiny crack in the glove box door made me feel watched. I reached out and opened it fully. Inside, wedged between an old road atlas and a spare fuse kit, was a laminated card, yellowed at the corners, slightly warped from age or cold. I pulled it out. It had no logo, no official markings, just plain white plastic with typed black letters that looked like they came from a typewriter. Someone had pressed them hard, like they were angry when they made it. Operator DIRCTIVS, night shift. I scanned it once, then again. 1. Do not plow roads not listed on your official route. 2. If a road appears that isn't real, drive around it. 3. Never stop at intersections that were not there yesterday. 4. Do not exit the vehicle after 1:13 a.m. under any circumstances. 5. Keep both side mirrors angled down. do not adjust. 6. Ignore voices coming from the CB radio if they call your name. 7. If you see yourself standing outside, do not acknowledge. 8. Some roads do not want to be remembered. I didn't move. I just sat there, breathing hard, as the heater blew stale air and the fog thickened outside the windows. These weren't instructions, they were warnings. None of them had been in my training. No one had ever mentioned any of this. I flipped the card over, but the back was blank, just a single smudge that might have been a fingerprint. It looked old, older than me, older than this truck maybe. I checked the fuse kit, the atlas, even pulled out the inspection tags from the glove box. Nothing unusual, nothing that explained where the card came from. My hands were shaking. I set the card down on the dash, but it slid off and landed face up on the passenger seat. Line 8 burned into me. Some roads do not want to be remembered. I looked back at the GPS, still dead, a pulsing red dot in digital white noise. I checked my phone. No signal, no bars, not even the fake emergency line that sometimes stayed active this deep into the woods. Outside, the fog shifted. Something about the way it moved felt off. It didn't swirl like normal mist. It rolled in straight, uniform lines, like it was following an invisible boundary. I angled the side mirror to check behind the truck, and immediately remembered the rule. Keep both side mirrors angled down, do not adjust. I felt a jolt of panic and twisted the mirror back down before I could catch more than a glimpse. But what I saw was enough. In the road behind me, the tire tracks were filling in too fast. The snow wasn't falling heavy enough for that. It was like the road itself was erasing the memory of my path. Like it was sealing itself shut behind me. I put the truck into gear and eased forward. The plow scraped the ground with a metallic groan, but the snow barely moved. It clung to the blade in thick curls, refusing to slide off. For the first time in years, I felt outmatched by a road. This wasn't just a maintenance issue. Something else was happening. The card sat on the passenger seat like a message left too late. The longer I drove, the more the forest changed. The trees no longer looked like the ones I knew. They grew taller, blacker, with bark that glistened under the headlights like wet stone. I saw shapes between the trunks, brief, flickering, too tall to be deer, too human to be trees. I locked the doors. It felt stupid, but I did it anyway. The air grew colder still. Frost crawled up the inside of the windshield like veins. My breath fogged the glass in rapid bursts. It felt like I was breathing through wool. Then ahead, a sign appeared in the dark. Just one word. Intersection. But there was no crossroad. No pavement leading off to the left or right. Just snow. And a single street sign stabbed into the drift like a marker at a grave. I slowed down. Against every instinct I had, I stopped the truck. The engine hummed low. The headlights cut a cone through the fog, barely illuminating the post. I leaned forward. The name on the sign had been scratched out, carved deep, over and over until the metal was shredded. But underneath, faintly visible, were the same words from the card. Do not stop. Never stop at intersections that were not there yesterday. I dropped the plow and hit the gas. The truck roared forward, blades sparking against something buried under the snow. A dull clang like hitting steel. The whole chassis jumped. In the rearview mirror, something stepped onto the road behind me. I didn't look long enough to see what it was. I just drove. The laminated card slid off the seat again and hit the floor. And I realized what had been bothering me since I found it. The typing, the warped edges, the yellowing. It looked old, but the card was laminated in plastic I recognized. Modern, new. It hadn't been left there years ago. It had been left there for me. Tonight. The forest began to thin after a few more miles, but the snow only deepened. I could feel the resistance under the tires, that thick drag that let you know you were pushing through weight and not just coasting over surface. I'd been driving longer than expected. Crimson Way should have looped back toward Route 9 by now, but every turn seemed to fold into another. No mile markers, no landmarks, just endless white framed by skeletal trees. The laminated card was still on the floor by my boot. I didn't pick it up. I didn't want to look at it again. Instead, I focused on the road, what little of it I could see. My headlights cut through patches of fog, catching nothing but shadows that didn't move the way shadows should. Long, stretched things that bent at the wrong joints, curling just out of reach like something testing the edge of light. I was about to make a hard turn back toward the ridge when the GPS chimed. Recalculating. A soft female voice, too calm, too clear considering I still had no signal. Turn left in 200 feet. I froze. There was no left turn near Black Hollow. I knew that stretch. It was one of the oldest roads in the district, carved around a granite slope that no one had ever tried to build through. The mountain there was too unstable, too steep. I pulled up the map overlay. According to the GPS, there was now a leftward curve that split off from the main trail, leading back toward town in a wide arc. I tapped the screen. The new road was labeled in the system. Glimmer Path. Never heard of it. Never seen it in any routing software. No operator logs, no local memory of it, and I would have remembered a name like that. Roads don't just appear out of nowhere. I pulled the truck to a crawl, headlights sweeping across the base of the hill as I approached the supposed split. There it was, cutting through the trees, perfectly straight, just like the map claimed. Only it wasn't marked, no sign, no post, no reflector stakes or barriers. And yet the road was cleared. Impossibly clean. Edges cut at perfect angles, like the snow had been sliced away by something sharper than any plow blade we had. No tire tracks, no salt, no sand, just a bare ribbon of pavement that looked like it had never been touched by human hands. I sat still for a moment, engine idling. I checked the GPS again. Turn left now. The voice was firmer this time. I checked the route sheet. There was nothing listed past Black Hollow. Crimson Way was the last stretch. I should have been heading back toward the depot by now. I looked out the side window at the new road. It seemed to pulse. Not move, just pulse, like it was alive somehow, reacting to the weight of my gaze, like it knew I was watching. My hands started to sweat, even though the cab was freezing. I should have backed up, turned around, followed the road I knew until I found my way back. But I didn't. Something about the new road pulled. I adjusted my grip on the wheel and turned left. As soon as I crossed the threshold, everything changed. The fog thickened immediately, not gradually. It was like crossing through a curtain. Visibility dropped to maybe 10 feet. My high beams bounced off the white and scattered into nothing. The road narrowed. I couldn't see the edges anymore. The trees leaned closer, branches arching overhead like the ribs of a tunnel. And then the road beneath my tires changed texture. It was subtle, a shift in the vibration of the cab. The hum of the plow blade softened, almost as if it wasn't scraping pavement anymore, more like glass or bone. I glanced at the speedometer. I was going 15, but it felt like I was gliding. Floating. The world outside the windows had stopped looking like forest. There were still trees, but their shapes were wrong, too symmetrical, too perfect, like someone had copied and pasted the same outline over and over again. Even the snowfall had changed. It didn't drift, it dropped. Straight down. Each flake falling in a perfect line, like white static on an old TV screen. I started to feel lightheaded. My hands tingled. I blinked hard and rubbed my face, trying to shake it off. That's when I realized I hadn't seen a single animal since I turned onto this road. No deer, no birds, no signs of wildlife at all, just endless snow and a road that had no business existing. I slowed to a stop. The fog swirled gently around the hood of the truck. I didn't shut the engine off, but I took my foot off the pedal and let the plow settle. It hissed slightly as the hydraulics adjusted to the weight. I sat there in the silence, trying to make sense of what I was feeling. The laminated card's words echoed in my head. If a road appears that isn't real, drive around it. I hadn't. I'd taken the turn, and now I couldn't even see the sky. Just white. White and trees, and a road that pulsed like it had a heartbeat. I reached for the CB radio. It was dead. Not static. Dead. No power. The screen was dark, no hum, no indicator light. It had been working an hour ago. I stared at my reflection in the black plastic, and for just a second, I thought I saw something behind me. Not inside the cab, but inside the reflection, moving slowly closer. I yanked my hand back and hit the gas. The truck lurched forward, tires spinning before they found traction. I didn't care where the road led anymore. I just knew I had to keep moving. Because whatever that thing was in the reflection, it wasn't waiting. It was following. The road didn't curve. It didn't rise or fall. It just kept going. Straight as a pin, cutting through a forest that felt too silent to be real. No wind, no rustling branches, not even the muffled creak of snow shifting under its own weight. Just the crunch of tires over frost and the deep rumble of my engine. I don't know how long I drove. Time felt like it had slipped sideways, turning seconds into stretches of blank thought. But then I saw it. At the edge of the fog, just where the tree line thickened again, a sign stood in the snow. Green, rusted, bent slightly at the base. I slowed the truck and rolled forward, squinting into the mist. It looked like a normal highway sign, except there was no number, no name, just a single symbol etched into its face like it had been carved by hand, a jagged circle broken by a single vertical slash. Snow clung to the metal like it was trying to hide the mark, but I could still see it clearly. It wasn't any symbol I recognized, not a local route, not from the state highway system, not from any signage code I'd ever trained on. I coasted the truck to a stop and leaned forward, staring at it through the windshield. The Plow's headlights caught flakes of frost on the surface, refracting the beams in pale, shifting glows. The symbol seemed to shimmer. I reached for the CB radio again. Still dead. Just cold silence. I pulled my phone from the dash mount. The screen lit up but showed nothing. No signal, no Wi-Fi, not even GPS. Just a blank gray map and the little blue dot that used to be me, now frozen, disconnected from the world. Behind me, the road had disappeared into a curtain of white. The trail I'd cleared was gone. Snow had refilled the ruts like water flooding a trench. I stared into that wall of fog for a long time. There were no lights. No shadows of distant rooftops. No faint amber glow from the town's main strip. Black Hollow was gone. Wiped out like it had never existed. I let the phone fall into my lap and rested my hands on the wheel. The cold hit me all at once. Not a breeze, not a drop in temperature. A sudden, suffocating cold, like stepping into a walk-in freezer with no warning. I checked the dash display. Outside temp, degrees F. That was impossible. It had been hovering around 10 degrees before the turn. I watched as the number flicked lower. -17. The defroster couldn't keep up. Frost bloomed on the inside of the windshield. I could see my own breath coming faster now, shorter, ragged. My heart started pounding, not from fear, from instinct. Something about that sign, that symbol. It wasn't a marker. It was a gate. And I'd passed it. I opened the glove box again and grabbed the laminated card, my hands shaking slightly as I turned it over. Some roads do not want to be remembered. This one didn't just want to be forgotten. It wanted to forget me. I turned on the cabin light and checked the mirrors. Both still pointed down, just like the rules said. But I couldn't help it. I tilted the driver's side up just for a second. Just enough to catch a glimpse of the road behind me. There was nothing. No tire tracks. No snowbanks. No trees. Just endless gray, like the world had been erased behind me with a wet brush. I jerked the mirror back down and flicked off the light. Then I put the truck in drive and crept forward. The road was still perfectly clear, freshly plowed, edges clean, too clean. But the longer I stared at the trail, the more I realized something unsettling. There were no plow lines, no marks from my own blade, no serrations in the snow from the spreader, no gravel, no salt. It was like I wasn't making contact with anything. Like I wasn't actually here. I rolled down the window and leaned out into the night. The air outside was dead still, but it stung my skin like needles. I looked down at the plow. It wasn't touching the snow. It hovered just a few inches above the ground, vibrating gently, as if the truck were skimming the surface of something less solid than snow, less real. I closed the window. That was when the static started. Soft at first, barely a whisper. Then louder, a hissing pulse like white noise fed through a dying speaker. I looked at the radio. It was still off. The static wasn't coming from there. It was coming from everywhere. The cabin, the vents, the floor. Inside my ears. Like the sound was rising up from the road itself and bleeding through the truck's frame. I grabbed the wheel tighter, trying to focus. Just drive. That's all I could do now. Follow the road until it gave me a reason to stop. Ahead, the trees pressed in tighter, branches arching over the road like arms ready to close. The plowed trail continued, perfectly straight, unbroken. And I realized I hadn't seen another sign of life since the marker. Not an animal. Not a tree with a broken limb. Not even a snowflake out of place. It was too perfect. Like someone or something had crafted this road just for me. And they were waiting at the end. The static faded as the road straightened again, leaving behind a pressure in my ears like I had just surfaced from deep water. I swallowed hard, trying to clear it. The cold felt sharper now, filtered through something I didn't understand. My headlights swept over the next stretch of forest, revealing nothing but rows of identical trees and a trail carved too perfectly to be natural. Then I saw it. A shape in the road, still upright, blocking the path. I slowed the truck until it crawled forward in a heavy glide. The plow blade hummed over the strange surface as the beams caught the shape fully. A deer. At least it looked like one at first. Its body was angled away from me, muscles twitching in sharp, unnatural spasms. Its legs were spread unevenly, as if it had been frozen mid-step. Snow clung to its fur in thick patches. Something about the way it stood bothered me instantly. Deer freeze when they sense predators, but this one trembled like something inside it was trying to escape. I tapped the horn. The sound echoed strangely, swallowed by the forest instead of bouncing back. Slowly, the deer turned toward me. My breath caught. Its eyes were gone. Not gouged out, not rotted away. Gone. The sockets were packed with dense snow, the edges frozen over in clumps that looked chewed. The way frost clung inside the hollow spaces made the face look both mask-like and disturbingly empty. The deer twitched again. Its head jerked in tiny movements, like a puppet pulled by invisible wires. Instinct told me to reverse, drive back, escape. But the road behind me had vanished into the fog. And the rules repeated in my head, each word tightening like a fist around my lungs. Do not stop. So I didn't. I nudged the plow forward. The deer didn't move at first. It stood in the beam of my headlights, shivering so violently it looked like its bones might snap. Then, as the truck came within 20 feet, it twisted its head almost 90 degrees. The crack of it echoed inside my chest. I gripped the wheel. I tried the horn again, longer, louder. No reaction. Its breath came out in quick bursts, but not warm vapor. The mist spilling from its mouth was thick, dark, like soot mixing with winter air. Something was wrong with its lungs. Something was wrong with everything about it. I eased to the right, hugging the shallow edge of the plowed trail. The trees pressed close, branches scraping against the side mirrors. The deer watched me with its empty sockets as I passed, its head rotating further than any vertebra should allow. Then it froze mid-turn, completely still. Even when my plow cleared the space beside it, spraying powder across its legs, it didn't flinch. I accelerated, wanting distance. The cab filled with the vibration of the engine as the road beneath shifted texture again. I forced myself to breathe slowly, resisting the urge to check the mirrors. But I checked anyway. Habit, fear, curiosity. In the rear view, the deer still stood in the road, half-turned. Then it moved. It lifted one leg. Then another. Slow, deliberate steps, not the uncertain trot of a startled animal. It walked, not as a deer. Upright. Its spine bent into a long arc, limbs straighter than they should have been, neck hanging unnaturally low. Snow poured from the empty sockets in slow streams, like something warm inside was melting the frost. I jerked the wheel slightly, heart pounding. The thing continued forward, each step too controlled, too aware. My mirrors fogged around the edges. I wiped the glass with the back of my hand. The deer picked up speed. Its hind legs snapped into long strides, swinging like loose hinges. Its front legs dangled at its sides, twitching occasionally but never touching the ground. It wasn't running. It was gliding. The same way my truck felt like it had been gliding over the road that was not a road at all. The deer's head lifted slowly until the empty sockets were locked on my headlights. I pressed the gas harder. The truck roared, tires gripping whatever surface lay beneath the snow-covered imitation of asphalt. I kept my eyes forward, refusing to look again. But something tapped the back window. Soft, almost polite. My skin went cold. I didn't turn, I didn't breathe. The tapping came again. A little faster this time. Then it dragged downward in a long scrape. I let out a shaky breath and focused on the white tunnel ahead. The trees closed in tighter, bending overhead in ways that didn't look natural. The branches curved toward each other like elongated fingers ready to lace together. I drove faster. The tapping stopped. For several seconds there was nothing. Only the hum of the engine and the soft crackle of frost forming inside the cab. Then the radio crackled to life. A single burst of static, sharp, violent, followed by a faint sound behind it. Breathing. Cold, raspy breathing, like something filling hollow lungs with air that was too heavy to hold. I stared at the radio. It was still off. The sound wasn't coming from the speaker. It was leaking out from the seams of the dashboard, pulsing in rhythm with the static that now throbbed faintly in the floorboards. I hit the dash. The breathing paused. Then from the rearview mirror's reflection, far behind me, I saw the deer again, standing in the center of the trail, still upright, head tilted, watching. I tightened my grip on the wheel, knuckles whitening under my gloves. Whatever that thing was, it wasn't a deer anymore. And whatever this road was, it was changing the things that walked on it. Maybe it had already started changing me. I pressed the gas harder, determined not to stop again. Not even to blink. Not on this road. Not with that thing behind me. The headlights stretched ahead into a corridor of pale trees and gray air. My fingers were cramped on the wheel, locked in a grip I hadn't relaxed since I passed the deer. My mind kept circling back to it, the way it moved, the way it watched, how it had no eyes but somehow still saw me. I needed to turn around. Even if the road behind was gone, even if the fog had swallowed my path, I couldn't keep pushing forward into something that refused to obey the rules of the world I knew. I slowed the truck and looked for a wide enough break in the trees. There was no intersection, no side path, just more of that perfect frozen line. Eventually, I found a gentle bend that opened just enough to maybe, barely, allow a 3-point turn. I threw it into reverse. The tires rolled backward a few feet. Then the road shifted. I didn't see it happen, I felt it. The curvature changed ever so slightly. The incline sloped where it hadn't before. My mirrors showed no forest edge, just the same repeating trunks and powder-white snowbanks. I tried again, another reverse, a soft crunch of snow. Then the back wheels lost grip. The truck tilted slightly. I slammed the brake. The tires spun once. Black ice. I eased off the brake and steered gently, but the front end kept drifting. The plow blade scraped something slick, something harder than frost. The headlights caught the surface. I stared confused. It wasn't just ice. It was darker than asphalt, almost oily in texture, glossy and dense like frozen obsidian glass. It spread outward in a perfect sheet, the boundaries of it too clean, too deliberate, as if poured and set rather than formed by nature. The truck drifted sideways, slowly at first, then faster. The forest blurred at the edges of the windshield as the truck rotated counterclockwise, sliding down the slight slope like it had been waiting for this moment. I pumped the brake, nothing, no friction. The dashboard lights flickered once, the engine stuttered. The radio popped. Then everything went still. The truck stopped moving. Not with a jolt, not with a crash. It just ceased. Like something had decided to hold me in place. I sat there, breathing hard, listening to the hum of the engine struggle against the cold. Then I saw it. A faint bloom of fog on the inside of the windshield. Right in front of me. It formed slowly, gently expanding and fatting. Then forming again. My own breath was shallow, held tight in my lungs. That fog wasn't mine. Something inside the cab had exhaled. I froze. The steering wheel was cold under my fingers, like ice had crept into the metal. My shoulders locked. My pulse throbbed behind my eyes. I looked to my left. The driver's window was fogged now too. The glass whined faintly under pressure, like it was being breathed on from the outside. Or maybe from the inside. Another bloom of fog appeared on the windshield, right in front of the passenger seat. My breath caught. I reached for the cabin light. My hand moved slowly as if the air had thickened. I flicked the switch. The light clicked on. The seat was empty. But the indent was there. Subtle but present, like someone had just stood up and left an impression in the fabric. I reached toward the seat. Then something touched the back of my neck. Not a gust of air. Not a chill. A pressure, like a cold, open palm. I turned around fast. No one. The space behind my seat was empty. The rear window fogged over, but no shape moved in the reflection. I faced forward again. The fog on the glass was now steady, forming and retreating in slow intervals, like measured breathing. It was inside the cab with me. I couldn't hear it, but I could feel it. The way the air shifted, the way my skin tightened, the way every nerve screamed for me to get out, to run, to break the rules if it meant surviving. Then came the sound. Faint at first, like steam, but deeper. Wet. A rattle, a gurgling exhale that rose from the dashboard vents. It didn't belong in any living thing. It sounded like breath forced through broken glass and waterlogged lungs. I reached for the gear shift. It wouldn't move. The handle was stuck rigid. I pulled harder, it refused. The breathing grew louder. I turned off the cabin light. Darkness fell again. Only the headlights ahead, cutting through the mist, gave me any sense of space. Then I saw movement. The fog ahead shifted. Not like weather. Like something moving through it. Something tall, pale. Barely visible. Walking in the same rhythm as the breath I heard inside the cab. I gritted my teeth, grabbed the key and turned it hard. The engine growled, shuddered, then caught. The gear shift gave. I slammed it into drive and pressed the gas. The truck jolted forward, tires spinning until they found grip. The black ice snapped beneath the plow, breaking into a shimmer of frozen shards that scattered like shattered mirrors. I didn't look at the seat beside me. I didn't check the mirror. I didn't breathe. I just drove. Faster, straighter, into whatever lay ahead. Because whatever had gotten into the cab with me. It hadn't left. The plow cut through the dark, scattering snow to either side like a blade through paper. The road felt looser now, less certain beneath the tires. Each bump vibrated deeper into the cab, like the truck was riding not on asphalt but something breathing just beneath the surface. I'd been driving for miles, though the distance meant nothing anymore. The GPS was gone, the phone was dead, the signs had stopped. And still the road continued. Worse, the cold inside the cab hadn't left. No matter how high I cranked the heater, the air stayed damp and sharp, like I was inhaling the inside of a sealed crypt. I could feel it in my bones, like the marrow was frosting over. But it wasn't just the cold that unsettled me. It was the feeling that I wasn't supposed to be here, that I was intruding on something older than this truck, this job, this entire town. Something that tolerated me, barely. I needed answers. I leaned to the side and reached behind the seat, digging my arm into the narrow storage box wedged between the seat frame and the cab wall. My fingers brushed past a crumpled bag of stale candy, a few disposable pens, a rusted screwdriver. Then I found it. Thick, leather-bound, cold to the touch. A logbook. I pulled it out and laid it on my lap, brushing off dust and some kind of grit I didn't recognize. It had no label, no name, just cracked black leather with corners worn to the paper inside. The edges were stained with water damage or something else. I opened it. The first page had a date written in neat block letters. Jan 4, 1991. That couldn't be right. This truck wasn't even that old. I flipped forward. Each page held notes from Plow operators, names I didn't recognize. None of them matched anyone currently on rotation. The first few entries were routine: road conditions, equipment checks, fuel logs, just the usual. But about 10 pages in, the handwriting changed. The script became messier, the lines shorter, like the entries were written fast while the truck was still moving. FEB 18, 1991. Saw fog lines shift again, roads longer than it should be, trees repeating. FEB 19, 1991. Passenger door opened on its own, never heard it unlatch. I flipped further, the pages grew more frantic. March 2, 1991. Don't stop when you hear the voice. It's not dispatch. It knows the rules, it uses them. March 5, 1991. There was a woman standing in the middle of the road. I didn't stop. I couldn't. She followed anyway. Then the ink changed again. A different pen, a different hand. March 12, 1991. Don't pick them up, even if they wave, even if they cry. They're not cold, they're bait. March 13, 1991. Do not respond when they knock. My stomach turned. I flipped forward, searching for more recent entries. The pages skipped weeks, then months. Some had been torn out. Others had water stains that blurred the words into unreadable streaks. Eventually, I found one marked in thick red pen. July 9, 1993. The roads are not made of stone. They are made of memory. They learn your route. They watch your hesitation. The plow clears more than snow. My pulse quickened. The truck's tires hummed beneath me, steady but somehow wrong. The vibration had a rhythm now, like a pulse, a beat, almost musical. The next entry was barely legible. August 4, 1993. The roads have mouths. They speak in fog. They eat the ones who stop. I snapped the book shut. Outside, the fog had thickened again. I didn't remember it returning. One moment it was gone. The next, the world was white, swallowed whole. The defroster struggled against the growing frost on the inside of the windows. My breath came faster, fogging the air in sharp bursts. The logbook sat heavy in my lap, like it was weighing me down from the inside. I reached behind the seat again, hoping maybe there'd be something else. A weapon, a flashlight, anything. But my fingers brushed something cold. I froze. It was soft, slick, like skin left too long in snow. I pulled my hand back fast, heart hammering. There was nothing there. Just the same empty space I'd searched before. I glanced at the rearview mirror. Still angled down. Still showing the floor. I didn't dare tilt it again. I looked back at the logbook. I opened to the final page. The handwriting was almost illegible, as if the pen had been shaking in the writer's grip. They know my name now. They wrote it on the ice. When I saw it, I started to forget who I was. Don't look at the signs too long. Don't listen when they whisper. You're not plowing snow, you're plowing memory. My mouth went dry. The page beneath was torn, ripped at the corner as if the last entry had been pulled free violently. Only a single sentence remained at the bottom in smeared black ink. Do not write in the book. I dropped it. The logbook fell to the floor of the cab, landing face down. I kept my hands on the wheel and focused straight ahead. Because something inside me whispered that if I looked back down, my name would already be there. Written in a hand that wasn't mine. I'd been following the road for what felt like hours, maybe more. I couldn't tell anymore. The sky had turned into a single sheet of colorless haze. No stars, no moon, no break in the clouds. It was like someone had erased the ceiling above the world and left only blank white above me. Then the road started to widen. Slow at first, subtle. I noticed the trees pulling back, opening space where there should have been more forest. The edges of the trail flared outward into a strange circular clearing. The snow piled high around the perimeter like it had been shoveled there on purpose. The truck crawled forward as I took in the shape. It was a cul-de-sac, but not the kind built for houses or intersections. No street signs, no tire marks, no homes tucked into the trees. Just a wide, snow-packed circle with 6-foot drifts forming a ring around the outer edge, like barricades, like walls. I took my foot off the pedal and let the truck roll to a stop. The engine rumbled low. Steam curled from the front grille, twisting into the frozen air and vanishing almost instantly. I reached to shift into reverse. Before I did, I dropped the plow blade, just enough to clear the fresh powder near the center of the circle. The metal scraped something hard, but it wasn't pavement. The vibration hit the cab differently than it had all night. It felt hollow, loose, like bone or thick wood beneath the surface, not asphalt. I frowned and lifted the blade, backed up a foot, tried again. Scrape, another sharp vibration. There was something buried under this cul-de-sac. Something that didn't belong on any mapped road. My hand moved toward the gearshift. I was turning around. I didn't care if the map made sense. I didn't care if the road led somewhere. Every instinct in my body screamed that this place wasn't a rest stop. It was a trap. I shoved the lever into reverse and hit the gas. The engine growled, tires spun. But the truck didn't move. I tapped the pedal again. Nothing. The entire cab shifted, just slightly, but no traction caught. The plow blade bounced uselessly in front of me, and the dashboard lights flickered. Then the engine died. No sputter, no stall. It just stopped, like something had pressed the kill switch. I stared at the gauges. Every dial fell to 0. The heater cut out. Instantly, the cold moved in. And at that exact moment, the digital clock on the dashboard blinked to life. 12:01 a.m. A sound left my throat, a dry, shallow rasp, not quite a word, not quite a breath. I didn't need the logbook to remind me. I remembered exactly what it had said. No turnarounds after midnight. They follow the heat. I didn't know what they were, but I could feel them. Not see, not hear. Feel. The air around me shifted, slow and deliberate, like pressure sliding into the cab through every sealed seam. My teeth began to ache with the cold. My fingers burned under my gloves. My breath fogged the windshield in short bursts. I reached for the key and tried to turn it. Nothing. I tried again. Silence. I banged the wheel once hard. Then everything outside the truck went still. No wind. No snow falling. Even the fog paused, frozen in place like someone had pressed pause on the world. And in that stillness, I heard a crunch. Snow. Something was moving. No footsteps, just pressure, weight displacing powder as it slid along the edge of the cul-de-sac. I leaned forward, staring through the windshield. Nothing. I wiped the fog away with my sleeve. Still nothing. I checked the mirrors, angled down, still in position. But in the right mirror, I saw the snow shifting. Not a figure, not a shadow. Just movement. As if something massive was crawling along the berms outside the circle. Then the left side. Snow caved in slowly, like something was dragging a heavy body around the perimeter. The walls of the cul-de-sac flexed inward, as if being pressed from the outside. My throat tightened. I grabbed the laminated card from the dash and read it again, hands shaking. 4. Do not exit the vehicle after 1:13 a.m. under any circumstances. That gave me a little over an hour. But I wasn't sure I'd survive 10 more minutes. I leaned forward again, eyes fixed on the snow. Then I saw it. A narrow ridge forming in the center of the cul-de-sac, a ripple pushing upward from beneath the surface, snow falling away in slow spirals as the ground shifted. It looked like something was rising beneath me. Not fast, not aggressive. Just patient. I twisted the key again. The engine groaned. Once, then sputtered, then roared back to life. The dashboard lights returned. The heater kicked in with a low hum. The vents blew stale air across my face. The road didn't want me to leave, but something else wanted me to stay even less. I hit the gas. Hard. The wheels spun, skidded, then found purchase. The truck lurched backward. I yanked the wheel, fishtailing toward the sliver of trail I'd entered through. The berms shifted as I passed. Snow collapsed inward as though something large had just missed grabbing me. I didn't look back. Didn't check the mirrors. didn't breathe until the road narrowed again and the forest returned. The trail behind me began to refill instantly, like the cul-de-sac had never existed. But I knew better. That wasn't just a dead end. It was something waiting to open. Again. At the right time. To the wrong driver. The road narrowed again after the cul-de-sac. The trees crept back in, closer than before, their limbs bent low and heavy with snow. But they didn't move like real trees. They stood still, too still, like they were watching me pass. The engine rattled, still shaky from the stall. My breath had finally steadied, but I couldn't shake the cold from my chest. It had sunk deep into my ribs, like I'd inhaled something the heat couldn't burn out. And the feeling hadn't left me, the sense that I was being followed, watched. Every time the plow turned a bend, I checked the side mirrors. I never saw anything, but I felt it. I needed to stop, just for a minute. I needed to clear my head, check the truck, check the tires, maybe take a breath that didn't taste like engine fumes and fear. I spotted a shallow clearing between the trees. The snow there looked less packed, like it hadn't been disturbed. I rolled the truck into the space and turned the engine off. Everything went quiet. Not peaceful quiet. Dead quiet. Even the sound of the heater clicking down faded too fast. I grabbed the flashlight from the glove box and stepped out, boots sinking deep into the untouched snow. The cold hit me like a wall. It stole the breath from my lungs, turning it to fog before I could fully exhale. I panned the flashlight around the clearing. Everything was still. The air, the trees, the road behind me. But then I looked down, and I froze. Footprints in the snow, leading straight toward the truck. Not mine. Barefoot. Human. Deep imprints pressed into fresh powder, toes spread, arches defined. Whoever made them wasn't running or dragging their feet. The steps were firm, planted with purpose. I hadn't seen them when I pulled in, but they were there now. I followed them. Slowly. Each step felt heavier than the last, like the air was thickening, trying to hold me in place. The prints were spaced perfectly, no hesitation, no sign of struggle. And after 10 or 12 steps, they just stopped. No trail, no circling. They didn't start from the woods. They didn't come from behind a tree or out of the fog. They began halfway through the clearing, as if the person had materialized right there and walked to my truck. I crouched down, flashlight shaking slightly in my hand. The snow hadn't melted in the shape of a body. No collapse, no sign of someone lying down. Just prints, starting from nowhere. I stood up and swept the light toward the trees. Nothing, just trunks. Too many, too close. But then movement. A shift, a subtle sway in the dark between two branches. I clicked the flashlight up a notch. Something moved again. To the left this time. Slow, not retreating, not aggressive. Just repositioning. Like it was trying to stay in my blind spot. The snow began to fall harder. I squinted into the beam, trying to pierce the haze. Then I saw it. Just for a second. A figure, standing beyond the first row of trees. Still tall, thin, unclothed. Skin the color of stone, or ash, or something older. Its head tilted as the light touched it, like it was curious. But its face, there was no face. Just smooth skin where features should have been, and where the eyes should have been. Hollows. Not empty. Moving. Like something inside the sockets was breathing. I stepped back. 1 foot, then another. The beam wavered. When I looked again, the figure was gone. The trees swayed softly, as if exhaling. I turned and walked fast to the truck. Not running, not yet. Running would make a sound. And I had a sudden, violent fear of making any sound at all. I climbed back in and shut the door. Locked it. Turned the engine over. It hesitated. My pulse spiked. Then it caught. The dashboard lights returned. The heater sputtered back to life. I turned on the high beams. Snow swirled. The clearing was empty. But the footprints were gone. Not covered. Gone. I shifted into drive. Pulled back onto the narrow road. Didn't look back. But in the corner of the windshield, I saw something. Just a faint outline. The edge of a handprint. Pressed into the fog on the glass. On the inside, the road narrowed again into a tight corridor of pines. Their branches arched low, weighed down by ice that formed in long, glassy spears. The headlights fractured across them, splintering the light into thin shards that made the forest look like a frozen cage. I kept checking the mirrors. I couldn't stop myself. Every few seconds my eyes flicked to the glass, expecting to see the faceless figure standing in the trail of my own headlights. But there was nothing. Only darkness, snow, and the faint blur of frost creeping inward around the edges of the cab. I tried to steady my breathing. I focused on the sound of the engine, the hum of the blade, the crunch of tires on packed snow. Normal things. Things I understood. Then something appeared ahead. A shape slumped near the right side of the road, motionless, half buried in the drift. At first I thought it was debris, maybe a fallen branch, maybe an abandoned jacket. As I drew closer, the reflective strip caught the beam of my headlights. Orange. A plow operator vest. My pulse spiked. I braked hard, skidding slightly on the thin ice until the truck shuddered to a stop. The figure was leaning against a bent road marker, his head slumped forward, face obscured by a layer of frost that clung to his cheeks. Relief hit me so hard my knees almost buckled. Another operator. Someone alive out here. Someone who might know what this place was. Someone who could tell me how to get out. I killed the engine and grabbed my flashlight. The cold outside was vicious. It chewed straight through my jacket, biting into my arms and chest. The windless air felt thick and unnatural, like it held its own temperature separate from the world. I trudged through the snow toward him, flashlight beam bouncing across the white. "Hey," I called out, voice cracking. "Are you all right? Can you hear me?" No response. I moved faster. When I reached him, I saw his hands first. His fingers were curled tight around a CB radio, knuckles blackened with frostbite. The skin had cracked in places, deep fissures running along the joints like dried clay. His wrist was frozen solid to the body of the radio, skin fused to plastic. I swallowed hard. "Hey," I said again, quieter this time. "I'm here, I'm with the county, I'm going to help you." He still didn't move. I crouched beside him and angled the flashlight toward his face. And everything inside me went still. His eyelids were frozen open. Frost had formed a thin crystalline film over the whites of his eyes, making them look glazed and hollow. His lips were blue, stiff, pulled into an expression I didn't have words for. It wasn't fear. It wasn't pain. It was the look of someone who had seen something they didn't believe could exist. His vest was torn near the shoulder, as if he'd been grabbed by something with strength far beyond human. A long, jagged tear ran down his side, exposing thermal layers beneath. My breath shook as I leaned in. An ID badge dangled from his frozen zipper. I wiped the frost from it and felt my stomach drop. My name, my phone, my badge number, everything down to the exact same clipped county logo I wore on my chest. I fell backward into the snow, the flashlight shaking in my hands. The frozen man slumped in front of me wasn't just another operator. It was me, or someone who looked exactly like me. I scrambled to my feet, heart pounding so hard it made my vision shake. The cold bit at my lungs, making each breath feel shallow and sharp. "No," I whispered. "No, no, no." The badge couldn't be real. It couldn't. I moved back toward him, hands trembling. I stared at the photo again. It wasn't just similar. It was me. Same face, same jawline, same slight asymmetry in the eyebrows I'd always hated. The badge was even worn at the same corner where mine frayed from rubbing against my seatbelt. I staggered away, shaking so hard I nearly dropped the light. What was this? A hallucination. A nightmare. Something the road had made. I forced myself to look at him again, really look. The skin around his eyes had deep cracks where frost had settled. His cheeks had hollowed inward, giving him the look of someone starved for days. His breath had frozen mid-exhale, a faint plume of ice still lingering near his mouth. He died recently. Not hours ago. Minutes. Snow hadn't even fully covered the imprints around his boots. The CB radio in his hand crackled suddenly. I jumped. Just a burst of static, a hiss, then silence. I crouched again, staring at the radio. I reached for it, hesitated, then forced myself to grab the cold plastic casing. The moment my fingers touched it, the speaker blared. A voice. My own voice. Whispering, "You're too late." I threw the radio into the snow, so hard it disappeared in the drift. I stumbled backward, tripping over my own boot prints. The flashlight beam flickered across the frozen body, over the badge, over my face staring back at me through a mask of ice. The forest behind me creaked. A slow bend of wood. A shift of weight. Something moved between the trees. I didn't look. I didn't want to see it. I turned and ran through the snow, slipping, gasping, nearly falling. I climbed into the cab, slammed the door, and locked it. My reflection in the windshield looked pale, strained, more like the frozen version than the living one. The engine fought me. The starter groaned, choked, hesitated, then finally roared to life. I slammed the truck into gear and accelerated down the road without looking back. Whatever was behind me, whoever I had just found, it wasn't my past. It was my warning. And the road wasn't finished with me yet. I drove fast, too fast for a road covered in black ice and secrets. The wheels skidded now and then, catching patches of something slicker than snow. My hands gripped the wheel hard, knuckles white, jaw clenched so tight it hurt. The image of the frozen man with my face burned behind my eyes. I kept the defroster on full blast, kept the headlights steady, kept my eyes forward. But the air inside the cab grew heavier again, not colder, just heavier. Like the oxygen was thickening into something else. Then the radio snapped on. Loud, painfully loud. A burst of static that pierced through the silence like a scream through a locked room. I jumped, one hand flying toward the volume knob, but it didn't respond. The dial spun uselessly. The buttons clicked, but nothing changed. The static twisted upward into a high-pitched whine, climbing in pitch and intensity, until it sounded like a transmission being torn apart in real time. Then it stopped. Silence. For 2 seconds, maybe 3. Then a voice spoke. My voice. But not my voice now. It sounded strained, aged, like it had been pulled through hundreds of miles of wire, distant and cracked. Repeating the rules. Do not plow roads not listed. If a road appears that isn't real, drive around it. Never stop at intersections that were not there yesterday. The voice trembled on that last line. It inhaled sharply, then screamed. Loud, long, human, but barely. The kind of scream that breaks something inside your chest, because it tells you the one screaming doesn't expect to be heard. It cut out mid-breath. Silence again. Then whispering. Soft, wet, right behind the speaker mesh. Plow between worlds, plow between worlds. It opens if you drive long enough, but it never opens the same way twice. My throat tightened. I stared at the radio. I could hear breathing behind the static. My own voice came back, slower now, broken, begging. Please, please turn back. Don't let it know you're real. Don't stop moving. Don't let the road remember your name. The dashboard lights dimmed. The cab's overhead bulb flickered twice. The temperature dropped again. Another 10 degrees at least. The windows fogged instantly, inside and out. I wiped at the windshield with my sleeve, but frost crawled up behind the glass even faster, forming branching veins that cracked the edges of my visibility. My breath came out shaky quick, too fast. The vents blew only air now, no heat, just movement. And the voice kept whispering through the static. They're in the snow now. They ride the plow lines. They wait in the ruts behind your tires. That's how they travel. I reached for the radio, desperate to turn it off, rip it out, smash it. The plastic housing was hot. Not warm. Hot. My fingers burned as I grabbed the casing. I yanked and the panel sparked. A flash of orange light burst across the dash. Then the engine stuttered. The truck bucked once, lurching forward as if it had hit something I couldn't see. The headlights cut out. Total darkness. I slammed the brakes. The tires locked and skidded on the glassy surface of the road. The radio howled again. Not with static, with voices. Dozens layered over each other, some human, some not. Crying, laughing, chanting words I couldn't understand. High tones, low moans. The swirl of language broken apart into pieces and stitched back together into something unholy. I covered my ears. My pulse pounded inside my skull. Then everything went quiet. For a long time I didn't move. Just sat there in the dark. Only the faintest red glow from the dash kept me company. Then a final whisper came through. My voice again. But closer. Not through the radio. From the passenger seat. They're almost inside. I turned. The seat was empty. But the indentation was deeper now. The belt was buckled. The dashboard lights flickered back on dim, flickering. The headlights blinked back to life, casting pale yellow light over the road ahead. And carved into the snow just beyond the reach of the truck, hood, was a symbol, etched perfectly, a circle split by a single vertical slash. The same one from mile marker 0. Except this time it was moving. The snow inside it pulsed, slowly, like it was breathing. I started the engine. I didn't wait for warmth. I didn't check the radio. I didn't speak. I just drove. Because something in the cab with me had started breathing again. And I wasn't sure if I still was. I kept driving. The road narrowed again and the trees began to bend inward. The branches didn't sway in the wind. They reached, slowly, like they were waiting for the right moment to close behind me. I wanted to believe I was getting close to the edge of whatever this was, that if I just followed the road long enough, it would spit me out somewhere real, somewhere warm. But I couldn't lie to myself anymore. The road wasn't taking me anywhere. It was keeping me, and something about it had changed. I tapped my phone screen, hoping for even a flicker of signal. Nothing, but the map app, still open in the background, caught my eye. The GPS dot was still there, but the map was. All roads had vanished. Every name, every town, every gray line that used to trace the veins of the county, gone. Only one path remained. A single glowing red line. A name hovered above it in all caps, stamped like a final judgment. Nowhere else. I stared at it for a long time. It wasn't a glitch, it wasn't lag. It was a name. An actual name. This wasn't just the road I was on. It was the only road that existed. I tried closing the app. It didn't respond. I restarted the phone. Still there, same red line, same cursed name. Nowhere else. I opened the glove box and pulled out the logbook, hoping maybe there was something I missed, some detail that would explain all of this. The cover felt heavier now, wet, as if the leather had absorbed the cold and was holding it like a sponge. I flipped through the pages, past the broken handwriting, the desperate warnings, the ink smeared by shaking hands. Then I found a loose sheet tucked between two torn entries. It wasn't a log. It was a sketch. Drawn in pencil, light, fast strokes, almost childlike. It showed a long, narrow road cutting through a row of distorted trees. The branches stretched outward like fingers, and at the end of the road, barely visible, was a dark spot. A hole. No explanation, no notes, just a caption scrawled underneath in jagged handwriting. Beyond this, the road writes you. My hands went numb. I looked out the windshield again, and I saw it. Not far ahead, the road narrowed further. The trees were gone. The world fell away to flat white terrain that stretched in all directions. And at the very end, barely visible in the fog, was that same black shape. A hollow. Waiting. I gripped the logbook. My body shook. I rolled down the window. The cold bit deep into my bones, but I didn't care. I threw the book. Hard. I watched it disappear into the snowbank on the side of the trail. I closed the window, sat back, exhaled. But the weight in my lap didn't go away. I looked down. The logbook was still in my hands, exactly where it had been a moment ago. Same waterlogged cover, same smear of ink on the edge of the pages. It hadn't returned. It had never left. My hands started to tremble. I opened the book again. The sketch was still there, but this time the caption had changed. The same words, only now they were written in my handwriting. Beyond this, the road writes you. I dropped the book to the floor. It didn't matter. I'd seen enough. I looked back at the phone. Still glowing. Still marked. Still trapped in a place that didn't belong to any map. I wanted to scream, to punch the dashboard, to shatter the windshield and run into the snow. But I knew better now. I knew what happened to people who tried to leave, who tried to turn around, who stopped moving. The road didn't allow escape. It didn't trap you in the usual way. It rewrote the rules. Rewrote you. I stared at the trail ahead, narrowing toward that dark point in the distance. There were no more decisions. No forks, no signs. Just one path. One way forward. To nowhere else. And I was already halfway written. The road should have ended hours ago. It hadn't. It just kept shifting, stretching, digging deeper into whatever place I was now crossing through. A place that didn't care about direction or time or what my body needed to stay alive. I hadn't seen another sign since the map renamed the path nowhere else. No intersections, no mile markers, no lights, just that endless narrow line of snow and ash-colored sky. Until now. The truck jolted as the plow blade struck something hard, something buried beneath the snowpack. The entire front end jumped. I caught the wheel and hit the brakes by instinct. Didn't matter. The truck slowed on its own. Even before my foot reached the pedal, the vehicle was already easing to a crawl. Ahead, the fog lifted just enough to show what I'd hit. A crossroads. It hadn't been there before. I was sure of it. I'd been driving in a straight line through a dead tunnel of trees with no gaps, no turns. But this was something else. The intersection formed a perfect X, with all 4 branches cleared and gleaming under the frost. The snowbanks were neatly formed along the edges, as if sculpted by machines or hands with far too much precision. The road signs were the first thing that made me want to turn back. There were 5 of them arched high above the middle of the junction, all coated in thick frost, but even through the glaze I could see the writing, blood-red letters, uneven, dripping. The first sign said, Michael Ray Carter. My full name, not just initials or a label, the complete name written exactly the way it appears on my license. No one had said my full name out loud in days, weeks, maybe longer. The second sign, Plum Hollow Elementary, Room 16. My 3rd grade classroom, the place where I first stayed late after school, the place where my teacher, Mrs. Keeley, forgot I was there, locked the doors, left me alone in a dark hallway until nearly 9 at night. The memory clawed up my spine like ice water. I hadn't thought about that in years. The third sign, You lied to her. I blinked. The words pulsed under the snow-dusted letters. They weren't part of a town or a direction. They were a statement, a judgment. And I knew exactly who it was talking about. I hadn't thought of her in so long, too long. I gripped the wheel tighter. The fourth sign, We remember. My throat went dry. The fifth, Now you do too. I slammed the gas pedal. The tires spun for a moment, then caught. But the truck barely moved. It was like the air had thickened around it, like the road itself had hands now, pressing against the wheels, slowing my momentum with invisible resistance. The trees bordering the intersection were thicker here, towering trunks with wide bases and low branches. As I passed them, I realized they weren't trees at all. Not exactly. Faces were carved into their bark. Dozens, each one stretched in horror, mouths agape, frozen mid-scream, eyes wide or in some cases missing entirely. Some had tears etched into the grain, others had symbols, slashes, circles, spirals cut into the foreheads and cheeks. They weren't sculptures. They were records. Memories frozen into the bark like the trees had watched something terrible and kept it. The cab lights dimmed again. My headlights flickered. The road signs swayed above the intersection, not in the wind. There was no wind. They moved like they were breathing. I tried to speed up. The truck resisted. I pressed harder. The engine groaned, low and angry. And then the steering wheel twitched in my hands. Not a pull. A shiver. Like something beneath the chassis had shifted, like the road had pushed back. The plow blade scraped loudly as it passed over the heart of the intersection, a shriek of metal on metal that vibrated through my spine. Then I saw them, carved into the road beneath the snow. Words, dozens of them, maybe more, scratched directly into the surface, just faint enough to be missed unless you were staring straight ahead. Names, dates, sentences. Memories. Some weren't mine, but some were. Clear as glass. He watched it burn. She never came back. You locked the door. You let HIM drown. The windshield began to fog again, faster this time. My breath came in ragged bursts. I leaned forward, desperate to see past the growing condensation. Then the road curved. Not left or right, not in a way that made sense. It spiraled. The front of the truck dipped slightly, the entire chassis tilted. I gripped the wheel, heart racing. The spiral turned inward, downward, like a drain. And at the center, I could see a sign. No pole, just a slab of bent metal sticking from the ground, half buried in red-tinged snow. The letters were jagged, hand-cut. They read, "This is where the road began writing you." I tried to brake, to slow down. But the truck kept moving. The cab lights dimmed a final time, then died. The temperature plummeted, and the blood-red signs faded behind me as I was pulled into whatever waited at the center of the spiral. The spiral ended as abruptly as it began. One moment the truck was sliding downward through a curl of snow and carved words, the world tilting at impossible angles. The next, the ground leveled beneath the tires, and the plow glided forward onto a straight, narrow path carved through a dense wall of frost-covered pines. The headlights flickered once, then steadied. The cab remained dark. Cold seeped in from every seam in the truck. My breath rose in thick plumes that didn't drift. They hovered, hung in place, suspended like smoke trapped in glass. I tightened my grip on the wheel. For a long stretch, I didn't dare look anywhere except forward. Not at the mirrors, not at the windows, not even at my own hands, scared that if I looked away from the road, I might see more words carved beneath it, more signs that knew too much. But eventually, the feeling became too strong to ignore. The sensation that someone was sitting beside me. It wasn't sudden. It was gradual, like a weight slowly settling into the passenger seat. First a faint pressure, then more, as if someone had shifted, leaning in, sitting down, finding a comfortable position. My hands shook. I didn't want to look. I forced myself to anyway. Slowly, the passenger seatbelt was buckled. I hadn't buckled it. The fabric was pulled taut across an invisible torso, pressed into the seat cushion below. A deep indent marked where a body should be, an unmistakable outline. Shoulders, hips, legs angled just so, like someone was relaxing after a long ride. Fog curled upward from the seat. Not from breath, from shape. A form that wasn't visible but present. Present the way gravity is present, the way dread is present, the way memory is present even when you try your hardest to forget. I swallowed hard. My voice cracked when I tried to speak. "Who's there?" The fog thickened. No answer. Just the sense of someone turning their head toward me. Watching me. Seeing me. I gripped the wheel and focused on the road again. The plow blade chewed softly at the unnatural snow, pushing it aside in rhythmic waves that felt too clean to be real. Then a sound broke the silence. Soft, gentle, a humming, a tune I hadn't heard in 15 years. My mother's lullaby. My breath hitched. My mother had died long before I took this job, long before I learned what loneliness really felt like, and yet the melody was exact, every note, every rise, every fall. The way she used to hum when I couldn't sleep. The way she hummed the night I told her I was scared of storms, and she told me the sky was only trying to speak to the earth. The humming grew clearer. Not muffled, not distant, right beside me, coming from a throat that wasn't there. I shook my head violently. No, 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 no. The melody continued, calm, soothing, wrong. I flicked on the cabin light. It sputtered to life weakly, casting a pale yellow glow across the seat. There was still nothing visible. No shape, no face. Just the indent in the cushion. Just the tightened seatbelt. Just the fog rising like breath without lungs. And then, a faint voice whispered between the notes. Only one line. The line she always sang to me before the last verse. "You're not alone, sweetheart." My hands clenched the wheel, so tight my fingers went numb. I stared straight ahead, refusing to look again. "That's not real," I whispered. "You're not real." The humming paused. For a moment, the cab was silent, except for the engine's trembling idle. Then the voice returned, lower now, rougher, like it was straining to imitate something it didn't fully understand. "Don't leave me alone here." I slammed the gas pedal. The truck lurched forward, engine roaring in protest. Snow blasted outward in a storm of white. The trees blurred into streaks. The humming stopped. The seatbelt unlatched on its own. It snapped back into place with a sharp metallic click. The indent vanished. The fog dissipated. But the cold didn't fade. It settled deeper. Into the cab. Into my skin. Into the place where comfort used to live. Whatever had been sitting beside me. It wasn't my mother. It had learned her voice, her lullaby, her tone, and used it like bait. As the plow pushed forward into the pale, breathless dark, one thought repeated in my mind with every churn of the blade. If it could mimic her so perfectly, it could mimic anything. Or anyone. Even me. The road changed again. No warning, no sign. Just a quiet shift, like the earth beneath the plow took a breath and decided to become something else. At first I thought it was the fog thinning, the trees fell away, the banks of snow flattened, the world opened up. But it wasn't freedom. It was exposure. And the road beneath me began to crack. Thin lines appeared in the snow at first, jagged spiderweb fractures crawling outward from the plow blade, splitting the surface like broken glass. The plow creaked, metal straining against something it hadn't touched before. I slowed the truck. The surface groaned. Not the groan of suspension or steel, not the moan of wind through hollow trees. A deep groan. Alive. It vibrated upward through the tires, through the cab, into my spine. I turned off the radio. It had been nothing but low static for miles now, and the silence felt more honest. I rolled to a stop. The headlights shone across the flat, broken white ahead. No curves, no shoulders, just a dead plain of snow cracked open in places like pressure fissures on a frozen lake. But these weren't natural. Not round, not spreading evenly. They were poolsing. Rhythmic. Slow and deep, like something huge and buried was exhaling through its skin. The plow blade groaned, sagged slightly, then bent forward, not from a collision or resistance. From suction. I jumped in my seat. The blade was being pulled downward, not fast, not violently, but steadily. The metal folded in at the edges, like fingers closing around it from below. I hit the reverse. Nothing. The tires spun once and locked. The cab tilted slightly to the front, just a few degrees. The groan came again. Deeper this time. So low it rattled my chest. I cut the engine. I don't know why. Maybe part of me thought quieting down would make it stop. That silence would unnotice me. I opened the door and stepped out into the night. The air was dry and biting, but not cold in the usual way. It was dead, like every atom had been emptied of life and filled with pressure. I walked to the front of the truck, boots crunching over cracked snow and something else. Something wet. The plow blade was halfway submerged now. The snow wasn't snow anymore. It had thinned into a slush so dark it looked like oil, but thicker, more organic. It pulsed under the surface. I crouched low and shined the flashlight into one of the fissures. And saw it. Not dirt, not water, not rock. Flesh. Gray-pink, ridged like the inside of a throat, wet and flexing gently. A living membrane stretching beneath the ice like a lung under bone. It moved. With breath. With thought. And it went on forever. The entire road wasn't built over this thing. The road was this thing. Whatever I'd been driving on. It had a body. I took a step back. The surface under my boot cracked open like a split lip. A burst of warm vapor hissed up through the snow, carrying a smell I can't describe. It wasn't rot, it wasn't sulfur, it was memory. Burned hair in a childhood garage. rusted metal in a hospital hallway, my mother's old perfume soaked into a winter coat after her funeral. All of it at once. All of it aimed at me. The cracks expanded. The plow groaned deeper as it sank into the poolsing mouth below. I ran back to the truck, breath sharp in my chest, lungs aching. The truck tilted again. The entire front end dipped. I grabbed the door handle, ice slick and hot at the same time, and pulled myself inside. I turned the key. The engine screamed. Not a grind, not a stall. A scream. From the engine block. From the metal itself. Then silence. Dead. The lights went out. Everything fell still. For 1 second. 2. Then I heard it. From beneath the truck. A tongue. Massive, wet, sucking at the undercarriage like a slug tasting rust. The metal beneath my feet warped upward. The floor began to flex. I didn't think. I opened the door and jumped. I hit the snow hard and rolled. Behind me, the truck began to sink. Slow at first, then faster. The plow disappeared first. Then the hood. Then the cab. The windshield folded inward, caved in by pressure. The entire truck groaned as it was swallowed whole by the breathing road. I backed away on hands and knees. The last thing I saw was the taillights, still faintly glowing. Then they vanished into the ice, and the road closed over them like lips over a bite. The cracks sealed behind it. The snow fell in slow, steady flakes. Perfect, as if the road had never been broken at all. I sat in the white silence, hands shaking, watching the last ripple fade from the ground. Then the wind picked up and carried a sound I will never forget. A low, contented gulp. I ran, not because I thought I could outrun whatever lived beneath the road, not because I believed the snow would hold, but because my mind refused to accept standing still after watching my entire truck swallowed whole. My legs moved before thought returned, boots slamming into the snow with uneven, frantic strides. Each breath tore through my chest like cold knives, but I didn't stop, not even to look back. I couldn't. The sound of the gulp still echoed inside my skull. The world ahead shifted. The snow melted. Not naturally. It melted in a line, a perfect corridor carved through the frost with impossible precision. A trail of exposed ground stretched forward, dark and wet, steaming gently in the cold air. Like something wanted me to keep going. Like something guided me. I slowed only when I reached the edge of the melted path. The ground was soft, muddy, too warm against the night. I crouched and touched it with the tips of my gloves. Warm, almost feverish. I stood and followed the path, unable to stop myself. My boots sank into the slush with every step, making the same wet sound as the road's breath beneath the ice. Ahead in the faint glow of the clouded sky, something moved. A silhouette, walking toward me. I froze. My hands curled into fists. The figure paced slowly, trudging along the melted path with measured, steady steps, not limping, not staggering, each movement precise, familiar, too familiar. The shape grew clearer as we closed the distance. Shoulders hunched, neck forward, arms swinging wearily at the sides, like a mirror of how I'd walked the past several hours. I tried to breathe, but the air felt too thin, too tight. The figure's face took shape, wrinkles carved into ash-colored skin, a jawline I recognized, cheekbones I knew better than my own reflection. Then the eyes, hollow, empty, drained of life, yet somehow still aware. I stared, my stomach twisted. It was me, older, wasted, starved by years on a road that had no beginning or end. Hair thin, beard ragged, lips cracked and purple from cold. My own face, but stripped of everything except exhaustion. I stepped backward, heart hammering. The older version of me didn't react, didn't smile, didn't frown. He just kept walking until we stood only a few feet apart, both framed by the melted path the road had carved for this meeting. His boots were soaked, his jacket stained with ice, his breath fogged in shallow bursts. But he didn't look afraid. He looked resigned. He lifted his chin slowly, gave me the faintest nod, a gesture that was neither warning nor greeting, more like acknowledgement, recognition, acceptance, as if to say, I know where you're going. I know what this place will make you. I know you can't turn back. I wanted to speak, to ask questions, to demand answers from this version of myself that the road had already claimed. My tongue felt thick, frozen. Before I could force out a sound, older me stepped aside, letting me pass. He didn't stop me. He didn't try to warn me. He didn't even look back. He walked on, shoulders sagging, head bowed, as if he'd done this 1,000 times before. As if he'd met me 1,000 times before. As if there were countless versions of me wandering the road, all trapped in their own loops. The melted path extended in both directions. One toward where I had come from. One toward where I had to go. The older version of me disappeared into the fog. His figure thinned, dimmed, then vanished entirely, swallowed like the truck had been. I didn't follow him. I kept moving forward. Each step felt heavier, as if the ground itself wanted to imprint my weight, my shape, my existence into its memory. I swallowed hard, and for the first time since the road began to change, I whispered the fear that had been clawing at me. What if the road didn't just write him? My voice cracked. What if it's writing me now? The fog answered with silence. I walked on, because there was nowhere else to go. The ground had stopped moving beneath me. For the first time in what felt like hours, maybe days, I walked without the sensation of being swallowed. The road stretched straight ahead again. No spirals, no cracks, no monstrous breath pulsing through the snow beneath my boots. But it didn't feel like relief. It felt like something had finished feeding. And now it was letting me go, or so I thought. I kept walking. The sky overhead was flat and empty. No clouds, no stars, just an endless, lightless sheet stretched across the world like a burial shroud. The road grew stranger the further I went. The snow was thin now, patchy in places, revealing a dark surface underneath that wasn't pavement. It glinted like glass but cut like ice. I watched my boots closely, careful not to misstep. Every footfall sent fine cracks whispering through the slick black path. Then I saw it. A sign, standing crooked on a rusted pole just ahead, barely legible in the low light. I approached slowly. One word was printed on its face in faded black lettering. Exit 0. That was it. No arrows, no directions, no next services or miles to junction. Just a statement. Exit 0. My chest tightened. There had never been an exit 0 on any highway I'd ever plowed. No one talked about it. No one marked it. And yet I felt like I'd been looking for it the whole time without realizing it. I stepped off the main path. Immediately, I knew something was wrong. The surface here was colder, sharper, littered with rusted scraps poking through the snow like discarded artifacts. I looked down and saw broken snow chains scattered across the ice, abandoned work gloves, a shattered thermos, a single cracked plow light. And boots, pairs of them, lined unevenly along the trail, half buried in frost, each pair facing backward, as if their owners had walked to this spot and disappeared. I kept walking, I don't know why. Maybe I thought exit 0 was a way out, a final turnoff before the road devoured what was left of me. But the moment I crossed the edge of the path, I heard them. Voices. Low at first, whispers from behind the snowbanks carried on air that didn't move. The first voice was familiar, gravelly, tired. I told them not to stop, but they did, and the road remembered. Another, higher-pitched and shaking. It doesn't forget names. That's what we didn't understand. Then a third, wet, gurgling, barely human. We are still here. I stopped. The snow to my left shifted. A shape pressed against it from beneath, like something trying to rise but not strong enough anymore. More voices followed. All around me. Some pleading. Some furious. Some broken. Whispers of men who had driven these roads long before me. Men whose names had been written in the ice, whose memories had become landmarks, whose boots now lined the edge of exit 0. They begged me to turn around, to leave, to forget. But I didn't. I couldn't. There was no going back. The road behind me was gone, erased like a chalk line wiped by a cold, patient hand. So I stepped forward. The whispers grew louder. Faster. Desperate. Don't let it write you. Don't let it finish the name. Exit 0 exists for no one. The path beneath me cracked again. The air felt thinner. The cold sharper. I looked ahead. The road split again, not left and right, but up and down. A ramp formed from the ice itself, curling upward into the fog like a bridge to nowhere. I walked. Every bootstep echoed now. Not on the road. In my head. With every step I heard a word. My name. Syllable by syllable. Spoken softly by 1,000 unseen mouths. Mikhail Ray Carter. My pace slowed. The final step before the ramp shivered beneath my foot. The surface flexed like stretched hide. It breathed. I looked down and saw words forming in the frost under my feet. They weren't written in blood. They were written in me. Memories, mistakes, lies I told, people I failed, moments I thought I'd buried. They pulsed beneath the glassy surface, each line a vein glowing with warmth that didn't belong in a frozen world. I ran, up the ramp, into the fog, and the road behind me whispered its last warning. Exit doesn't let anyone leave. The ramp led into fog so dense it became a wall. I pushed through it, my boots scraping over ice that sounded thinner with every step. Wind howled now, not around me, but beneath me, as if I were walking over a canyon sealed shut by frost and memory. Then I reached the end. The road simply stopped. No warning, no sign. Just a ledge. And beyond it, nothing but pale emptiness stretching in all directions. I stood there for a long time, breathing shallow, feeling every part of me tremble beneath the weight of the cold. My jaw locked, my fingers stiffened. The air in my lungs felt metallic, like I was breathing the inside of a freezer sealed long ago. Then I saw it. The pillar. It rose just beyond the ledge. Maybe 20 feet tall, maybe more. It was hard to tell through the shifting fog and the way the light bent around it. It wasn't stone. It wasn't metal. It was ice, but alive, pulsing from within with dull red light, like veins carrying heat through something that shouldn't be warm. Carved into the face of the pillar was a plaque. Rectangular. Glowing. The words etched into it burned a soft red through the frost. I stepped forward. Snow crunched beneath me, but not much. The ground here wasn't thick anymore. It felt hollow beneath the surface, brittle. I stopped just a few feet from the pillar and looked up at the plaque. The letters moved as I read them, curling like smoke, sinking into me before I could register what they meant. But I read them anyway. Aloud. The final rule is this: you were never the driver. The moment I finished, something inside the ice shifted. The ground cracked. A line shot through the ledge beneath me, spidering outward with a sound like splitting bone. I stumbled back. The air around me dropped, not gradually, instantly. The kind of cold that doesn't hit your skin, it enters you, crawls into your chest, freezes the lining of your throat, rattles your spine from the inside out. I dropped to my knees. My breath fogged, then froze midair. Crystals formed around my eyelashes. My skin burned. I reached for my gloves, my jacket, anything. But my arms weren't responding the way they should. They felt heavy, slow. I looked down. Ice crept across my fingertips, spreading over the fabric of my sleeves like it was being painted on by an invisible hand. The wind picked up again, but it wasn't howling now. It was speaking. Dozens of voices. Hundreds. All saying the same thing in different tones, different tongues, different layers of agony and awe. You were never the driver. You were never the driver. You were never the driver. I fell to my side, arms curled in. My jaw clenched against the cold as the words settled deeper into my bones. And in that moment, I understood. I had never chosen the route. I had never turned the wheel. Not really. I had followed a path that was already written for me. From the first night I signed onto that shift. From the first time I touched the plow's ignition. From the first moment the road saw me. I wasn't the one driving. I was being delivered. The road had written me, rewritten me, and now it was ending me. I rolled to my back and stared up at the pillar. My vision blurred as frost overtook my eyes, spreading from the corners inward. My thoughts slowed, my breath thinned. The red glow on the plaque flickered once, then faded. The cracks beneath me deepened. The world bent inward. The fog collapsed like a lung being emptied. And the last thing I felt wasn't fear. It was detachment. Like the cold wasn't killing me. It was returning me to something I'd once been. Before the truck. Before the snow. Before the first road was ever cleared. I woke to the sound of the engine idling. Steady. Familiar. The rumble I'd heard 1,000 times before. Deep. Mechanical. Comforting in the same way the hum of a refrigerator is comforting in the dark, because it means something is working. Alive. The cab light was on. The heat was blowing. Not cold, not burning, just warm enough to keep breath from fogging the windshield. My eyes adjusted slowly. The dashboard clock glowed in soft amber. 7:00 p.m. Evening. A fresh shift. I looked down at myself. Same gloves. Same jacket. Same boots. Same faint oil stain on my thigh from the hydraulic leak I never got around to cleaning. My phone buzzed once in my jacket pocket. I pulled it out. The lock screen lit up. No missed calls, no messages. Battery full. Signal strong. The weather app said snow was expected after midnight. The GPS was on. I tapped the screen. Every road in the county was visible again, labeled, marked. Normal. Like none of it had happened. Like I'd never vanished into a frozen spiral, or watched a version of myself disappear into fog, or seen the world breathe beneath the ice. I turned to the passenger seat. There it was. A clipboard. Red route sheet clipped on top. Freshly printed. My name typed at the top in black ink. Michael Ray Carter. Night shift, Zone 3, North Ridge. I flipped through the pages. Crescent Hill, Route 12, Fairview Pass. Then near the bottom, circled in red pen. Crimson Way. My throat closed. The name pulsed off the page like it had been burned in rather than written. I looked closer. A sticky note was attached to the top of the sheet. 2 words. New edition. No initials. No instructions. Just that. I sat still, staring at the paper, staring at my name, staring at the roads that I knew didn't exist anymore, or maybe had never existed at all. The same thermos sat in the cup holder. The same dent in the dash from where I'd hit it during a snowdrift slide 2 winters ago. Everything the same, except me. I moved differently now. Slower, like something inside had been packed in frost and hadn't fully thawed. My hands trembled, but still they reached. Without permission, without thought. They reached for the keys. Fingers closed around the familiar shape. I tried to stop. I tried, but the movement wasn't mine. It belonged to something deeper, something already written. The key slid into the ignition, turned. The engine roared to life, steady and clean. The GPS loaded automatically. 1 by 1, roads highlighted on the screen. Blue turned green, green turned red. A soft voice echoed from the dashboard speaker. Calm. Mechanical. Beginning route. I stared ahead at the depot's garage door as it rumbled open, snow falling just beyond. Same snow. Same silence. The road waited like a page waits for a pen. And deep inside my chest, something whispered. You were never the driver, but you always start the route again. Some nights everything feels normal. The hum of the plow, the grind of the blade pushing hard-packed snow aside, the soft glow of the streetlights as they flicker on 1 by 1 across the rooftops of a sleeping town. If someone were to see me through the window of a passing house, they wouldn't notice anything strange. Just another night shift operator clearing the roads, just another man doing a quiet job. But I feel it. Always. The way the steering wheel sometimes tugs gently in a direction I didn't choose. The way the snow seems to fall sideways when I drive certain stretches. The way the air thickens when I pass familiar landmarks, as if the world is holding its breath. Most nights, I try not to think about it. I tell myself I imagine the things I saw, the deer with frozen eyes, the older version of myself walking toward me on a melted path, the frozen man wearing my badge, the pillar of ice with the final rule. I pretend none of it happened. But the road remembers. And it does not let me forget. It happens subtly at first. I'll be plowing Fairview Pass, cutting a clean path through 3 inches of powder when something catches my eye. Not straight ahead, not even to the side, just at the very edge of my vision. A road, thin, barely carved, leading into a patch of woods where there should be no path. A place I've passed every winter for years, always the same, always predictable. But suddenly, something new is there. A bend in the snow, a curve in the tree line, a dark line of exposed ground where no tire has ever touched. I blink, and it's gone, but the shape lingers in my mind. A suggestion, a memory, a temptation. Other nights it's more direct. I'll hit a patch of ice near the ridge, the normal kind, the kind caused by temperature dips and drifting snow, and the truck will slip. Only a little. Just enough for the headlights to swing sideways and illuminate something in the ditch. A road marker. Green. Bent. Unnumbered. Frost clinging to the edges in the shape of a circle split by a single slash. The same symbol that marked my end. My beginning. My rewriting. I drive past it fast. But I feel it. Watching. waiting, inviting. I told myself I'd never take a strange road again. Never turn where the map goes blank. Never follow the glow of a path that wasn't there before. But the road remembers me. And remembering changes things. At first, it only shows me glimpses. A reflection in a puddle where the water ripples toward an unseen drain. A frozen breath mark on the inside of the cab when I know I'm alone. A faint hum in the passenger seat, the same lullaby in the same voice humming behind the glass. Then it becomes bold. One night plowing the ridgebone stretch near Black Hollow, I saw it open. Not appear. Open. The snow split down the middle like two curtains being pulled apart. The trees bent back, exposing a path clean, freshly carved, as if waiting for its first traveler. It pulsed. A heartbeat under the ice. A call I felt deep in my bones. My hands tightened on the wheel. I did not turn, but the road did. It bent toward the opening just slightly, as if drawn by a force stronger than steel, stronger than memory. The blade shuddered. The cab lights dimmed. Something warm breathed across the back of my neck. My hands shook so violently the plow fishtailed, and I barely regained control before hitting the guardrail. When I looked again, the path had sealed. But I knew what I'd seen. What the road had shown me. It wants me back. Not as a driver. Not as a man. As something rewritten. Something it made. Some nights I lie to myself and pretend I'm safe. Pretend that the red route sheet isn't always waiting for me on the passenger seat. Pretend the logbook doesn't still sit behind me, heavy and patient, even though I threw it into the snow. But deep down I know. The road isn't done. It remembers my footsteps, the sound of my engine, the shape of my breath. And every winter night, the pulse of the unseen paths grows stronger. Closer, more insistent. One day, one shift, one snowfall, I won't resist. The wheel will turn on its own. The air will thicken around me. The plow blade will drop. And the road will open. Not a crack. Not a spiral. A mouth. Waiting to rewrite me again. Waiting to finish what it started. And I know, with a certainty that chills me more than any winter night can, that when that moment comes, I won't come back. Not as myself. Not as anything human. I will become part of the road. Another whisper in the snowbanks. Another face in the bark. Another memory carved into ice. Because the roads remember me. And soon, I will remember them.